one amazing series of YA novels, an insatiable thirst to relive the glory that is K.A. Applegate's literary masterpiece. This is Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles. Number 1, The Invasion.
Hi, and welcome to episode 1 of Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles. My name is Mikael. I will be the host. I'm sitting here with
Tessa. I am the expert.
And I'm Brayden. I'm the new kid. Don't ask our last names because we won't tell you them. Because if they know, they will shove their big slimy ones in our ears.
Okay, off to a good start, I can see. It's a secret, last names, all that. We are talking about the first in the main series of Animorphs. We will be talking about every book in every Chronicle, Alternamorph, Megamorph subset of Animorph books. But for now, just the first one. We'll start off with our newbie, Scobie, giving us a rundown of what happened this time.
All right. Well, Animorphs number 1, The Invasion. First of all, lovely cover art. Absolutely disturbing to the core.
Very
just
realistic.
His weird, pale kid painted face with the dark pupil and eyes.
Also, that haircut.
I know.
That is a good haircut.
So nice.
Lord. He looks ready to take the boy band scene. Anyway, it starts out. It's narrated by Jake, a plucky young boy who has recently failed to make it onto his school's basketball team as he is grief gaming with his friend Marco, lamenting that he won't be on the team like his older brother Tom, who he has recently become less close to.
Recently.
Very
recently.
Don't read into that at all.
Him, Marco, and 3 more of their friends, Tobias, Rachel, and Cassie, go home, and they walk through an old construction site, and it starts to get dark, and they see an odd, orbular, spiky spaceship fly out of the sky, land, and out of it comes what we now know as an Andalite, but what they describe as a deer centaur draft thing. This is a member of an alien species that has technologies that make it so that they can morph into different animals. Ipso facto, Animorphs. It gives them these powers so that they can act as a resistance against another invading alien force. Tessa, the expert, is laughing at us.
That's pretty accurate, I think.
Yeah.
Just pulled out ipso facto out of nowhere. And I'm like,
Ipso facto?
What the fuck?
It's Latin for
If so, the fact.
And fact.
Oh,
yes.
The fact is.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just... Oh, you were going so good, and I mean, that was just perfect, and I couldn't take it.
You ruined it.
Anyways.
Podcast canceled.
Yeah, they get powers. Go on.
Yes, they gain these powers. These spooky yerks come out of the sky.
So just to interrupt, maybe we should settle on pronunciation.
I was just going to say...
Because I looked this up.
Oh, did you?
Because I didn't know... Okay, so we're not... Jacques.
Is this not in the U.S.?
Jacques Raquel.
So the big one was, for me, Dork-Bajir, because that's the name of the podcast. So, and I had to do the intro, so it was like, I can't pronounce it wrong. As a kid, I said Dork-Bajir, like the animal. But I looked it up, and apparently Applegate said Bajir was the way to pronounce it. Well, the second syllable was stressed. As well as Scobie, or Brayden. I'll edit that out.
Don't worry.
You said Yerk.
Yes.
But I'm pretty sure it's Yerk.
Yerk?
I also said Yerk.
I
said Yerk as a kid.
Why don't we just say Yerk, and then maybe
I'm not going to ever, because now I've said Yerk for years now. Because in the TV show they say Yerk.
I mean, it's a little late to start
We can all
adopting
just say it
pronunciation.
different. I mean,
Sure.
at least we all say GIF correctly, so that's one thing we got
I
going
know.
for
True,
us.
true,
know.
true.
But I always said Dork-Bajir, but that could
Yes.
be because I knew people, like I knew Persian people, so I was used to saying.
But it's
like,
not
It's
Dork-Bajir.
not. No,
It's
but I could be.
Dork-Bajir.
It's Dork-Bajir with the hard J.
Bajir.
But I'm thinking.
Bajir.
But I'm thinking maybe,
Italian people say alien names like this.
Exactly.
Anyway,
I'm thinking maybe I knew Persian people, and that's why I like fluid the J because I'm used to saying it with several of my
Tessa,
friends'
don't
names.
fucking give away facts about our life. The Yerks
I'm sorry.
will find us
I'm sorry.
and stick their big slimy things in our ears in the pool,
Oh yeah.
just like Uncle Don.
I feel like we could get into the ASMR of a Yerk sliding into your ear later. That's pretty good. Okay, wait. Let's just finish with the summary, though. So they get the powers. Oh, there's still some Foley work going on over there. They get the powers from the Andalite.
They
You're
get
taking
the
a while
powers
with
of an
the
Animorph
summary.
and the light.
This is
Tessa,
detailed. This is more
I'm gonna
detailed
pull
than I
out your
expected.
teeth. Anyway, they are then a swarm of these Yerks comes out of this spaceship, and they are introduced to two different species that have been en masse taken over by the Yerks. The Dork-Bajir, who look like scary knife snakes, but are described as overall good. They have been enslaved
Yeah.
by the Yerks. And then there's the Taxons, who look like gross, evil centipedes.
Okay.
And the Andalite establishes that they are pure evil. There's nothing good about them. They are actual terrible villains. The entire species, eradicate them in camps.
Also, when we get to the Andalite Chronicles, you'll see why.
I-
But also,
yeah.
we didn't say the pronunciation of taxon
Taxon.
or taxon.
I actually forgot
Taxon?
entirely what it
Taxon.
was.
Taxon. I say taxon, but I don't know why, actually.
Because you're wrong.
Is
Taxon.
it taxon?
Taxon.
Well, I was thinking like taxonomy. Taxon? Oh, that is how you say it.
taxonomy.
Taxon.
No,
Because
it doesn't sound like a word.
because I had pitched the name
Taxonomy.
taxonomy of a series for the podcast.
Did you?
But I didn't get
in the
that
chat.
joke until you just said that name like that because I was pronouncing it taxonomy.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, well, let's just all say things our own way and
Let's just do it.
eventually
Anyway.
absorb
I
pronunciations.
mean, we're not going to kill each other over mispronunciation. We're going to kill each other because we're all Yerks.
We're going to kill each other over who our OTP is.
Oh,
Oh
yes.
God, yes.
God.
Also,
Me
they
and Marco.
become higher level viscers.
What?
Yeah.
Not, never mind.
No.
Anyway.
I'm secretly Visser too.
Anyway, we are then introduced to Visser 3, the only Yerk to ever slime his way into an Andalite.
That's another thing. You said Visser with like a Z sound. How do you say it?
It's viscer.
Is
Visser.
Yeah, because I say Visser.
Visser.
Yeah, it's because there's two S's. so
I'm just
kinda
letting it
has to.
slide together real hard. So
Visser.
I like that.
Visser 3. It makes them sound Russian, and we all know that the Russians are the scary guys because these books are set in the 90s, which is when the Cold War was. Also, I'm homeschooled, so.
anyway,
I think it was
Visser
over.
3
I think it was over by
is
that
the
point. But yeah.
only,
It's the
Okay.
no.
Visser 3 is the only Yerk to ever find himself an Andalite to possess, and so he's the only Yerk that has morphing powers. And beyond that, he also has morphs of horrid, evil alien creatures, including hentai fuck beasts and 8-headed, 8-armed, 8-legged dragons that turn so far unnamed children into boy confetti.
Yep.
Yep.
Anyway, he turns into this hentai fuck beast and that literally eats in a single bite the Andalite, the alien who gave these children their powers. The children run off. They now have the psychic power to mind talk with each other. And this is actually introduced later, but I'm introducing it now because I'm confused. Anyway,
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
they
The
fuck
admission
around
is
for a
good.
little while,
Yeah.
doing shit like, "Is this a dream? Is this reality?"
Yep.
But yeah, it's reality. Their one friend Tobias takes to the morphing incredibly well. He morphs into a cat, and this is where we find out that when you morph into an animal, you don't just have your people brain in an animal body. You've got to be fighting some like base animal urges. Like
Yeah.
Tobias goes fucking nuts for some string and like really wants to get his claws in a mouse.
I don't like how you said. I really don't like how you said base animal urges.
Oh, we're going to be getting into that.
Really
later.
uncomfortable, and it reminds me of bad fan fiction.
Also,
Anyway.
like, just hearing the description of
Yes.
Mr. 3 eating the Andalite, I was about to name him. Oh, I don't know if we know his name,
No,
actually.
we do.
We do. Okay.
He introduces
Prince-
himself, Prince Alfanger Cernial Shamtel. He's like, hello.
That is impressive.
My name is
Alfanger.
Alfanger
That you could
Cernial
remember
Shamtel.
the last name, even.
Like, it's not even just last names. It's like,
There's
they
middle
got a
names in
whole
there.
Okay, now
naming
I'm
system.
imagining him with like a sassy like, oh, I'm Medea. Hello, I'm Prince.
Hello, I'm Prince Alfanger Cernial Shamtel, and you kids
Shamtel.
have got some bad 90s fashion. Here, you turn
Anyway.
into your earth animals, and this will become a whole zoo for Andalites to come and turn into animals. And
That
If
was
only-
not part of the book, let's be
no,
clear.
that's
Okay.
not part of the book because he dies instantly and too loud.
Where was I? Tobias is a little. This
He has
begins the foreshadowing
his
of
base
Tobias
animal
being
urges.
way
And
too into being an
They
animal.
foreshadow that like crazy. I just love it so much, but I can't stay for more than 2 hours. But I just fucking
Oh yeah,
love it.
They're
Yeah.
not. They cannot be an animal for more than 2 hours at a time, or they will stay that animal. Okay. Tobias shows Jake how to morph. Jake morphs into his dog, and Jake. Last night at the construction site, there were some humans some Yeerk humans, and Jake heard a laugh that sounded oddly familiar. And then we hear he establishes that his doggy self hears a familiar laugh from Jake's brother, Tom. It's at this point that we realize, the audience realizes that Jake's brother is a Yeerk boy.
Yeah.
But
Human controller.
but Jake does not realize this.
Official term. Yeah.
So this is where we really start to hate Jake.
Is it?
Yes.
We can talk about that in a bit.
We can, of course. I'm exaggerating, of course. Some other traits about the other characters. Rachel is your preppy sort of
You talk about how Jake
Tight collar
describes his cousin as very pretty.
yes. Jake
Yeah.
and Rachel are cousins, and the way
That's not the first thing he says
Well,
about
yeah,
her.
he says that's Rachel. She's kind of pretty, I guess, for my cousin.
Right, which is like it questions
A weird way.
what
to
are his
introduce
standards?
it.
And also, where are they in the States? Because Midwest, like South
That's a good
Midwest. That makes
There's
sense.
a lot of animals.
How many eyes do Rachel and Jake have? Are they maybe missing a couple of teeth?
Oh god.
But anyway,
close and
Marco's a bit standoffish. He doesn't want to have anything to do with this Yeerk Andalite space war. He just wants to forget what they've seen and get on with their lives. Jake's kind of on the fence. Rachel and Cassie are also similarly undecided, but Tobias is gung-ho. He has 100% taken to this Andalite war morphing shit, which I'd like to state now for the record that I am predicting that they said early on when they saw this alien, they were like, we weren't scared. We were very, very shocked and surprised for it. Probably more shocked and surprised for it. That Andalite fucked with their brains. It full on Dr. Light fucking psychic lobotomized them and made them predisposed to care about this war against their wishes.
So that's not even a fan theory. You think that's going to come up later?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a fan theory currently. If they don't get into it, I'm still gonna probably believe that. But if they get into it, I will call it.
So
like
that's
it was
an
a prediction.
overarching thing. Okay. No, that's fair.
Where were we? Yes, they were
You
all.
are taking so long.
Yeah, you've
for
already
this
spent
really
about 20
At
minutes.
this point, they are
Yeah.
introduced to the idea that there are humans in places of authority that are already possessed by the Yeerk. They are called controllers. They join this group. They find out Jake's brother Tom is indeed a Yeerk. He is part of a group called the Sharing. That is a front. They do Boy Scout co-ed night volleyball, hanging out.
Yeah.
Probably some fucking. And
They're what? They're 14.
Probably. Yes.
Should we be talking about that?
Tom's older brother.
No,
is
Jake's
like,
older brother.
Sorry, Jake's older brother is named Tom, and I mean he's got to be 17. And I don't know when y'all first started getting down, but I am still a virgin.
Mom, don't listen to this. Yeah.
Mom, hi. Glad to hear you there.
I was 21 years old. It was Remembrance Day. She had just been talking about her father, and we were having a little bit of a debate about trigger words and trigger concepts because we had seen some fascist imagery in Haran High School host club, and she cried for a while, and then we fucked.
That was way too detailed to not be true. Yeah.
It is true.
Okay, wow.
Sorry.
I'm not telling mine, so I hope you're not setting that up for that.
It'll come out.
Okay.
There's a whole 58 more books.
There's so many more than that.
There's over 60.
Okay, so they established that this group called the Sharing is a Yeerk front. The inner circle is all Yeerk controlled, including an unnamed policeman and their own assistant principal. It's at this point they start gathering morphs actively. Cassie's parents own a sort of barn vet of any sort of animals. They work for the zoo. They'll like take in strays or like injured wilds.
It's sort of an ill-defined farm thing.
I mean, the way you got all the words right and terribly wrong. Cassie's dad runs the wildlife rehabilitation center, which is the barn converted into like where they rescue like coyotes that been poisoned.
All the words right.
Cassie's mom.
You idiot.
Idiot. Everything's wrong. Cassie's mom is the head veterinarian of the gardens, which is more than just a zoo. They describe it as a zoo, and then they say it's more than that. It's a wildlife
That's what
center.
every zoo says. It's more than a zoo because people don't want to think of it as like a horrible cage fest for animals.
Cottage zoo. But there's also an amusement park with the gardens.
So
it's at this point Jake turns into a lizard, to a very, very tiny lizard.
Called a green anomal.
This really isn't. We have a section.
I know, but you're so specific about the lizard.
Anyway,
we're almost done.
He follows his principal, and it's at this point we get our second scene and our probably most explicit yet scene of Vor.
Yeah.
He eats a spider
part
and
of
it describes how it is still alive in his belly as he is spying on his assistant principal, who goes into the janitor's closet, twists a couple secret knobs, and it turns out there is a Yeerk base known as a Yeerk pool underneath their school. The kids kind of like huff about more about, do we be fucking big ol' heroes or do we forget we saw all this shit? Tobias is again gung-ho. Everyone else Marcus is
Marco.
Anti-gung-ho.
Also Marco. That you gotta get that right.
Marco.
Yeah.
What did I say?
You said Marcus.
Marcus. Oh, sorry. Again, Marco is anti-gung-ho. Everyone else falls a little bit in between, but then ends up going 100% gung-ho, including Marco, because he is a good, pure soul deep down. And he wants so much for his friends and his family and his loved ones. Anyway, it's at this point that they go to the gardens, go to the zoo, meet a couple of larger, more dangerous animals, and just touch them. Just rub them up and down to acquire their DNA.
So that's the key word there, acquire.
Yes.
Right, so we haven't really talked about keywords, but what they've already established is turning into an animal is called morph. Getting the animal's DNA is called acquiring. I don't think they have a word for getting stuck in that form.
Not that we've heard yet.
Okay, I don't even remember this.
Permamorphed.
We can say permamorphed, but it will come up in book 8.
Okay.
I will probably still say permamorphed.
I like
still
permamorphed.
Always call Visser 3's first form the hentai fuck beast.
I love your names for the forms because they're all like Yeerk words, most of them, or like words in other languages that visitors like, oh, hello, look at my big bad blah.
Yeah, we will definitely get into
we're
more
gonna
Visser
use
3
Brayden's-
forums as we go through the
Brayden's
series.
And he's also at the spoiler alert, at the end, he turns into what I like to call the 8 dragon. A dragon with 8 legs, 8 arms, and 8
A
heads.
creative name for that.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
always pictured it with human heads, which is
That's
I don't know,
nasty as
more
fuck.
terrifying.
And then, anyways, we'll we're almost done the summary.
Yeah. They go to the Yerk pool. There's a little bit of an exciting scene where Marco and Jake are chased by zoo security. They end up in the tiger cage, and Jake acquires his Battlemorph, Le Tiger.
I don't think that's an official term.
Actually, they call them that in the books later on. They're like, let's do Battlemorphs. Or like, let's not do Battlemorphs.
Holy
Let's do
shit.
something else. And I'm like, you fucking nerds. Battlemorphs.
Yes, they are the nerds.
Okay.
Shut up.
Anyway, he acquires his
one
tiger
thing about
morph.
acquiring is when you acquire an animal, they go into a trance. So that's how they're able to escape the tiger, is that Jake acquires it, it doesn't bite them, and then they run up and run away.
Our first and not last affectation to date rape. They go to the Yerk base. You see the Yerk have to every 3 days come out of a host's head and swim around in a big black pool
To do what?
to gather nutrients and something called Ragian rays.
No, Candrona?
Candrona rays.
Which is funny because when I was first a kid, I missed that second N, like completely. And I always, or like the first N, I guess. Because I always
Cadrona?
called them Cadrona.
Cadrona.
Cadrona. And then whenever I would reread it, I'm like, oh, Candrona. I'm like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, that's fair.
They need to get their Candrona rays and the pool, which occur naturally on their home planet. But the Yerk pools, I guess, then are...
They have artificial ones.
Yeah, artificial
Yeah.
In this sense. And they need to be in there every 3 days or they will die. Like pathetic creatures. The slugs, the parasites. Fuck them. Fuck them dead.
There's more opinion than I thought there would be about that.
It's at this point they establish more solidly that there are Yerk slaves, humans and other animals who get forcibly yerked, and when they are not yerked, they get put in cages. And there are apparently also people who choose to be yerked because when they're not yerked, they get to watch TV. It establishes very poorly why anybody would choose to be yerked.
Well,
bring that up.
It's
They'll
basically
explain that later on.
Cypher from The Matrix. Remember how he chooses to be plugged back in because he loves steak so much?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's like if you look at the people stuck in a cage and you're like, well, I'm not gonna like defeat the Yerk, and if I'm mad at it, they're just gonna put me in a cage every 3 days. Or I get steakums and cheese nips and probably off-brand cola at least and watch TV underground. Who cares? I relate to that quite a bit. If I was already captured, like, fuck, I can't beat this guy. Right? Anyways.
We can go into
Okay,
that. What would
definitely.
that be when you were captured?
We gladly find out that Jake's brother Tom is actually a slave. He is in the cages and he is freaking the fuck out. He's swinging. He's keeping those elbows high in the mosh.
There's also a key point as to why they go so soon into the Yerk pool.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Cassie gets back. We sort of brushed over it before, but there is a cop who is a Yerk who goes unnamed, but he captures Cassie and brings her to the Yerk pool, and it's at this point that the kids save Cassie, not him.
Yeah.
He gets assumedly brutally murdered because we don't see this scene, but it establishes that Cassie took care of him.
Yeah, so hey, this is something I wanted to talk about. This book goes from like tentatively like testing out things here and there to mass murder.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And like the book brushes over it by being like, oh yeah, I don't want to know what happened to that guy, or disappeared underneath. Oh, I couldn't see. But it's like it's strongly implied that these 14-year-olds
14-year-olds
have just killed like over 10 people each.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Right.
no, they definitely go. Once, I mean, if I could take over for a bit, like they get down there, they move Animorphs, and they're just ripping into the alien guys. Like they kill to try and get their way back out.
But not just aliens.
Not just aliens, they kill some human controllers too.
Well,
And they,
of
like,
course.
And like yeah,
Is
like
that-
they just go for it.
Is
And,
that
like,
a problem to you?
Well, when's the last time you were just like, oh, I'm okay with just, straight up murdering some people?
I mean, you haven't seen him play Dark Souls.
You have not seen me play Dark Souls. That's true.
He's punched every one of our coffee
You want to
tables.
look at that table? That
They're
one has
all
some big old fucking
dented.
holes.
That one over there has the box over top of it to hide his shame.
I don't think that is the same thing at all.
Pretty
Anyways,
sure.
I just wanted to point out how crazy that was. that they
Yeah,
did
no,
that.
Yeah, that is pretty.
and
For
they,
14-year-olds.
they gloss over a lot of the violence in this book. I mean, not all of it. Sometimes they'll just be like, "Oh yeah," and then I was bludgeoning him to death with my arm. But when I don't know, when I was a kid, I don't remember them being particularly violent. Or it could be, yeah, they were violent, but I knew it was fake and it didn't really affect me at all.
Right.
Whereas when you're an adult, you're just like, holy fuck, like this is really dark. When you're a kid, it's like, oh, it's like a video game. Like,
Yeah.
you see Mario bleed in Super Smash Bros. It's the same thing.
And I
What?
suppose
No, you don't.
I know, but if you did, wouldn't it be better?
it's not actually
Yeah.
that crazy because there is some PTSD stuff that comes up
Mhm,
later. So it
Oh,
just struck me as crazy that they were like totally no hesitation
Yeah.
to kill these
Book
people.
one.
Well,
yeah. I
'cause
asked
they turn
Cassie
into
later
the
what
animals.
happened to it. It's like, don't even worry about it.
They turn into the animals, and they do, like I established earlier on, they go beast mode.
Yeah.
They are in the heads of these animals, and I think maybe they talk about it later, but I think probably that's a lot of it. Like, a tiger doesn't get fucking worried about killing an 8 dragon.
Yeah.
A tiger doesn't fight. That's probably there's a scene where Rachel turns into an elephant and kills a taxon, a centipede, and it deliberately describes her as rolling over it until it turns into jelly.
I mean, not hard to
Like
do.
she fucking like that. That's not a combat move. That's a taunt. That's a fun thing to do, like a dog rolling in a mud puddle, like a woo.
I mean, it's not
These
hard
kids are having
to
fun,
do.
and they're like quipping one-liners, like woo. It's big time. It's morphin' time. It's big time.
They don't say it's
Marco
morphin' time.
turns
nearly
into a gorilla and is like, "Call me King Kong."
enough. Yeah. Also, what were
These
you
kids
gonna
are fucking high on combat drugs.
Just that taxons, like, of the bad guys, of, like, the shock troops that the Yeerks have, which are human controllers with... so the Yeerks, one thing you haven't mentioned, I don't think, is the Yeerks have laser cannons called Draken beams. Draken beams.
Is it like-
I say Draken. I don't know what the word.
They're basically like these, like, lightsaber cannons, in a
Oh.
sense, because they cut through anything. And we'll go into later about what they're based off of.
Okay.
So we got human controllers with Draken beams, and then taxons and Dork-Bajir kind of have those too, but Dork-Bajir are covered in blades, so typically
They are
they'll
knife
use that.
snakes.
Yeah.
And then taxons are the huge centipede guys who will eat anything, but they're very squishy.
Oh
So I feel like Rachel would just have to, as an elephant morph, just step on one and it would burst.
yeah. It describes it as like a tube of toothpaste.
Yeah, basically. I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I thought,
again,
yeah.
the Andalite Chronicles will explain this quite a bit, but taxon are kind of like fodder for the Yeerks because they're so easily controlled. But anyways,
Anyway.
that pretty much
yes.
brings us to the end of
The finale. In the finale, they have freed some human and Dork-Bajir slaves. They are escaping. Visser 3 finds them, and this is where we find out that Visser 3 is either I believe another fan theory of mine. Visser 3 believes that they are Andalites. They are Andalites that must have escaped from them.
Because andalites
But-
are the only ones that can morph.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they know some teenagers were at this construction site. So I think the Yeerks and maybe the larger galaxy, the Andalites have kept it secret to themselves that that morphing is a technological thing. the universe at large believes it's a natural inborn talent of the Andalites.
I think it's probably fair to say, too, that Visser 3 has got some ego involved because he establishes that he's the only Yeerk with an Andalite host. So to assume that anything else could have that power would be a pretty big blow, right? Yeah. Because then if all of a sudden this species that he looks down on has this power that he's so proud of, it's kind of like an ego crusher.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. But Tom is also has also seemingly escaped. But as they're running out, humans and Horks that they are helping out are getting fucking popped by Visser 3 just seconds at a time, in mere seconds.
As the 8 dragon.
Tom tries to yo, stay away from those animals, creep, and tries to fist fight a dragon and is killed, slashed. Jake gets a couple of good hits in, but ends up having to run away. They end up saving only one woman, who is never mentioned again. They don't mention, we dropped her off at the police station, or we dropped her off where she said. They just don't mention her again.
And obviously Cassie gets out.
Yes,
obviously.
Yeah.
We established that nobody wants to know when she did that. Please.
Oh yeah, the cop that brought her down. So theoretically, the only controller that knows she's an Andalite,
or was suspicious that she kept poking around.
Yeah, is dead now.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically,
there's no more ties from them to this construction.
Their secret identities are safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the end of the first
actually, there's a couple more things. Just two more. Literally two more.
Okay.
Tom comes back. Jake is all busted up because he's like, I tried all that work to save my brother and now he's dead. Oh, no, wait, he's back. Which surprised me because my visual interpretation, when it said the dragon slashed Tom, I imagined him going from a boy to lettuce. Boy confetti is how I described it. But I guess he was fine enough to patch up.
I seem to remember that he was slammed out of the way. I
remember him being slashed and then he slumped down.
I don't even know.
I can't remember the details of that.
I started rereading these yesterday and I'm on book 8.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, Tobias comes to visit Jake in hawk form, says, "Woo, sorry I lost you there, buddy boy." And then Jake's like, "Cool, turn back, Tobias. Please turn back, Tobias."
Yeah.
Tobias is perma-hawked.
Yeah.
Tobias was hiding down in those tunnels for longer than 2 hours and is perma-hawked.
And the sentiment is very tacked on there, too. Because it's for one thing, Tobias is we have been fucking telling you to not push it so much. And then
also,
it's shocker, he pushes it too much. And then all of a sudden we get the first real emotion out of Jake, which is a tear. He wipes the tears away, and I just didn't buy into it at all.
Yeah,
he was. It's I feel like the whole reason why Tobias got trapped was because before this is book 1, but also before the school, before they even break into the school to go into the Yeerk pool, Tobias is already a hawk. He's like, oh, I want to see if I can do some extra recon before we go in. And Jake's like, no, we weren't supposed to morph until we were down there. And then with the fight and everything, Tobias was like, there's no way that I could get out. So if he didn't morph beforehand, would he have been trapped?
Well, that's also confusing because they say that there's a hole in the Yeerk pool. There's a hole in the ceiling that leads out. Unless it would be...
Was there a hole in the ceiling?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought it was just the staircases.
Well, honestly, the physical layout of the pool was very poorly described.
Yeah.
I imagine it as hellish. 100% just hi, I didn't catch anything about a hole in the middle, going up.
Really? Okay, maybe I misread it.
It was just some kind of rafters kind of thing that he was hiding in. Beams.
Well, that was probably a longer summary than we needed. We're sitting at
really long.
33 minutes. So
we
now,
don't want to assume our audience is reading along with us.
I mean, who's going to read this podcast? People who've read Animorphs.
We should assume that they have read the book.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
Only because, otherwise.
And also because a lot of Animorphs fans love it when, at least the ones that I follow on Tumblr, it's people, they love it when, oh, somebody's reading it for the first time. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Tell
true.
me what you know, just because it's, so much happens. It's like watching somebody play through How to Fool Boyfriend for the first time.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's not just a dating sim about birds? Yeah.
Exactly. Although
Beautiful.
this series is a dating sim about birds.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. So, dating sim about birds.
Yeah.
Who is going to date Tobias now that
Rachel.
he's trapped? Yeah, no, it's Rachel, and they're my OTP.
Whoa. Don't give too much away.
Well,
She rubs her head on him in
On
bird
his
form
hawk
when
body.
he
Yeah.
flies down and lands on her shoulder. And Jake is like, "Oh, I didn't think that
I
Tobias
wonder
would
why."
choose Rachel." Oh, and then Rachel, who's not normally really affectionate,
Yeah.
rubs her head on his hawk body.
His big ol' hawk.
Okay, so we've established that the
Red
foreshadowing
tail.
is clunky and obvious.
Tobias'
Um,
name should be Mike Hawk.
That's actually pretty good. I like that a lot. Yeah, so what do you guys want to talk about first? Because there's quite a bit.
Let's
to
talk about
unpack.
other couples. So we've got those two
Other
established.
couples, okay.
And then who else will couple up?
So
Jake is into Cassie.
yeah, he needs
He
that.
says that
He makes no bones about that.
he says that he
He
like
wants to
likes
make
her.
some bones, though. Yeah.
Just one big one, really. And then I really ship Marco and myself because he is the best.
Marco
okay.
Marco is probably the only
Age
realistic.
appropriately.
He's probably the
Not
only
14-year-old.
realistic character
Yeah.
in the whole thing, where he's just like, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't, as like preteens, be risking our lives
Yeah.
for
They're not,
something."
I guess they're not technically preteens because they
Become
are
a
14.
paramilitary guerrilla resistance against an alien threat.
Gorilla resistance. Because he morphs into gorilla.
It's got two meanings. It's wordplay.
Bang bang gorilla.
I'm curious to know what you guys think of the, like, from a narrative point
Mm-hmm.
of view, what the book would have been like without two things: the barn and the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Because
god, it would have been so boring.
we'll revisit this later, but it's like those two things basically make the series work
Like that's
as
where
a whole.
Well,
that's where Tobias
certainly.
found his hawk body
Yeah.
that becomes his new body.
The barn,
and
yeah.
that's where they're. And then also in the zoo is where they find their battlemorphs that they will what they end up calling their.
It
Battlemorphs.
is certainly if they did not have access to the like animal healthcare facility that is the barn, things would be much harder. But there's no universe where they could write this book. There's no universe where they wouldn't have access to a zoo.
Right.
Like
Unless
even
they
if
were,
it
like-
wasn't like they could just make that entire like they could just write that it was a little harder to get a hold of these animals.
The only
What
thing
if, it
is,
was,
like,
what if they were placed in a small town? Like, what if they were placed in the middle of like some tiny small town? Like, they're obviously in some kind of city, but what if the Animorphs grew up in a small farming town?
Yeah.
'Cause then they would have no animals but horses and cows.
right. So, because if you think about it, like, a tiger doesn't even exist in North America, right? So
Yeah.
that's out of the question.
It could
Neither do
probably
gorillas.
I imagine it being just a bit more of a big deal when they get a morph. Like in this, it's a pretty neat little like acquiring the magic sword or like discovering your magic powers moment. But I imagine it would be probably even bigger. Like they'd probably have a couple of horses, maybe some birds, a cow or two, or like a bull or something, and that
Yeah.
would be their starting point. And then like in book 4, 5, book 10, they'd
Yeah.
find like in book 5 they'd like go on a trip to a zoo, and that would be the entire book is like them
Right.
sneaking behind
So-
and like getting a gorilla, getting a tiger, getting an elephant.
That brings up another point, which is, and they kind of address it in the book, but like, if I had gotten these powers, would I not just then acquire literally everything?
I would just like have a field day at the
Yeah.
zoo and just be like, I don't know what I need.
But the thing is, they also say, like, well, is there a limit to how many you can have?
That's
And
also a
do
thing.
you want to, like, acquire 50 insects and that be your inventory for the rest of your life? Fair enough. I can see that, I guess. And in fact, you'll see that becomes, not that specifically, but, like, the arc of acquiring an animal is very, like, repetitive throughout the series.
I don't know if this is a spoiler. I mean, it's the book covers. It's not a spoiler.
Right.
But I notice on some of the book covers, they change into other human beings, aliens, and on one book cover, Rachel just becomes herself, but like with like a buff UFC fighter body and some
God,
claws.
that book was fucking weird.
I can't remember that one
I
at
did
all.
not read it very often because I remember reading it once when I think I was rereading it when I was 13.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just really
So
uncomfortable.
obviously there's some tentative, there's some maybe not so tentative limits that once they really get into their own, they can start playing with.
Well, that also brings up the other idea, which is like, okay, let's just assume they're older at this point so that it's less creepy, but could you not then acquire each other's DNA and then fuck?
Well, and
also, like, scissor yourself or something like that?
Well, and they talk about the idea of acquiring other humans, or like Cassie even has a thing where they're acquiring people, like animals who are sentient. Because if you don't know, she's kind of like the moral nugget in the middle of this whole center of people.
She's the dark chocolate moral nugget.
She's a creamy dark chocolate in the middle of this piece of white bread. Well, Marco's Hispanic, so he's not too white.
That is like so not ever brought up.
Yeah,
it is.
They make it pretty hard. They make it like, damn well known. Cassie is black.
Yeah,
they say
she's
Cassie is black.
It's Rachel, Tobias, Jake, Marco, and Black Cassie. Basically, is the crew.
Marco's Hispanic. He brings it up in the first book from his point of view, book 5. They talk about how his mom is Hispanic and his dad is pale.
Yeah.
In like book 4, they talk about how he has olive skin.
Another thing. I don't know why they bothered with this, but they established when the ship was appearing, like fucking static electricity and shit is going everywhere. All of their hair is standing on it except Cassie's. Because she has black hair.
Well, and
maybe
also
we shouldn't talk about this too much.
She keeps it cut close to her head because she doesn't care. That's the thing that makes her and Rachel's relationships really interesting. Is because Rachel is very much a blonde, beautiful teenage girl. So she has this long blonde hair that sticks straight up, whereas Cassie is more comfortable wearing overalls and dirty, muddy boots and like shoving her arm down a wolf's throat to like stuff a pill into him.
Yeah.
And so she keeps her hair cut close to her head.
You're so adamant about that.
Well, she talks about it in book 4. Like, she keeps her hair cut close to her head.
No, that's fair.
Like, okay, well, yeah. So maybe her doesn't change much.
We're spiking a little.
I wanted to bring up another point, which was kind of where this conversation started, which was that Cassie was the quote-unquote moral center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a point probably about 2/3 of the way through where they're talking about, like, is this moral, like, turning into animals? And she says something very... Like, I thought maybe just it's like the age we live in now, but she says, back in the old days, I mean, the real old days, the Africans, the early Europeans, the Native Americans, they all believed animals had spirits, and basically, like, goes on to appropriate, like, a whole swag load of, like...
Well,
but the question is...
when you break it right down, like, that's just what religions are.
Well, not so much the animal thing.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of...
That's like paganism.
That kind of paganism, but I mean, the Greek gods thought that Zeus turned into all kinds of animals and fucked women.
Oh, yeah.
But the difference is there that he was a human-looking thing that turned into animals, where she's talking about, like, using the spirits of the animals.
Which is,
Which they really don't ever touch on again, I don't think.
No, that's pretty much Cassie's whole bit, is that, it's just like Mother Nature is, like, Mother Earth is protecting herself from the scourge of the Yeerk. She just
which is like
times.
pretty loose.
Is Cassie gonna become like a fucking war criminal? Because she's like, our god doesn't like you.
Like an eco-terrorist against aliens?
Yeah.
Okay, favorite character? Cassie is... I mean, they're all so good because they're all so different, but I remember really loving Cassie's books. When I was a kid, just because, I don't know, she was like the nice one.
I feel like...
I was also like a nice dweeby kid.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't relate to Rachel, and of the two girls in the group,
right.
It's like, okay, there's like the nerdy one who's not pretty, and there's the pretty one. Which one was I wonder.
You can definitely tell that it's like trying to do that thing where I think American shows still do this all the time, but it's like, let's cover every base. So like everyone who's reading this can relate to one person, even though these people wouldn't be friends in real life. Yeah. Like realistically.
I don't know, it felt pretty
organic. They do that in Japan.
In this book,
they do that in anime too, with harem shows.
Where it's
they
just
have
like
the different archetypes.
One person is loud, one person is an introvert, one person is black. I don't know.
I don't know, maybe it's because I know this series so well and I know the characters really well, but it feels like they're very, I don't know.
The A on that black was so long. Black.
It seemed longer. That may be an editable moment.
The character relationships felt really organic to me, and just watching these kids like hang out because I don't know. Maybe it is my bias because I know the series well, but they felt really realistic, like people. And especially knowing how they are closer to the end of the series, it was fun to go back and read the first book and be like, oh, Jake is like the person everybody looks to as a leader, even though he's kind of like, I guess so. Tobias is the one who really likes to fly, and then, now you're a hawk forever.
Well, Tobias is definitely like, you have depression, so if we make you stuck in a hawk form forever, it's going to seem to the audience to be not so bad because your life as a human was kind of shitty. Because if it was Jake that got stuck, it would be like, well, that screws over a lot of people.
Kid.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like now it's fucking Riverdale.
We are not doing Riverdale talk at all.
Becomes Riverdale, and then nobody cares about the missing kid.
The first book with Tobias on it. Is it Tobias? Maybe it's Jake.
It's book 3.
It looks a lot like Jughead.
Like Jughead? Yeah. Book 3. Tobias.
I have a feeling, like, Marco obviously was the one I related to more as a kid, but more because it was just like all the things I was thinking he was saying out loud, like, why are we doing this?
Yeah,
like, this seems really dangerous.
He was like the funny realist who was also like
sad clown.
Sad clown. He's like, I don't want to think about my life, but also like, why are we doing this? And also, we should have like 10,000 backup plans.
He drops some exposition bombs a few times too that make it like, it's kind of like, I don't know what the word is, just stilted, like where he's oh, I don't want to do this because I have to look after my dad because my mom died. And it's like, dude, we know that already. Like, you don't have to say it.
That's one thing about the book series is that like one of the faults of the book series as a whole, I think, was that if you're reading them all, it gets a bit repetitive at parts because everyone they start out and they're like, okay, here you are. I'm the narrator of this book. I can't tell you my last name. I have to catch you up on what a Yeerk is and what Biscuit 3 is and what a Dork-Bajir is and
it's
what
true.
morphing is.
Which
and
is
also
weird.
Marco's mom is dead and also Tobias is a hawk.
Is that just like a scholastic book order type thing where it's like these kids are only getting them? Maybe they thought cats are cool, so they started with the second one. You know what I mean?
Kevin Smith has this cool quote where he's talking about his time on Daredevil in the 90s. He wrote the what arc did he write? The one where Daredevil gets a cool black suit. He was talking to Stan Lee, and Stan Lee, the rules at Marvel are you have to establish the superhero's origin story and what has happened in your character arc again at the start of every single comic book. And he asked Stan Lee, like, why would we do that? People like come back to these. These are supposed to be a continuous story. And Stan Lee told him because every comic book is someone's first comic book. And I think Animorphs, like not only because of the subject matter and like age range and like smaller size, I think just because of like the prolificness with which they were putting it out, they realized like they were very much aiming more for almost a comic book sort of deal than your traditional Harry Potter thick bind hardcover mass sales sort of deal.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this before, but like we shouldn't really refer to the book as if it was Applegate talking to us because it was rarely her writing the books. My understanding
I think she wrote the first 10 or so books, maybe first 15. It was not just her; it was her and her husband. And then they put K.A. Applegate instead of Catherine Applegate on the cover so that it was more gender neutral so that boys would read the book. Same with J.K. Rowling calling herself J.K. instead of Josephine.
J.K.
Just
kidding, Rowling.
And then she came back to write the ending books. But yeah, a lot of the books were ghostwritten. And you can tell by some of the later ones where they get kind of goofy.
Spaghetti.
I put a lid on it.
Oh, thank God.
a little intermission
an hour
there.
Ago.
Yeah, like I think the way we should refer to the book telling us something is literally just calling it the book. Yeah. Because I think she probably had a hand in the overall structure.
I am a big believer in the philosophy that the author is dead.
Yeah, and in this case, it's a little bit more literal than the literary term the author said.
Shit, is she dead?
No, but
Applegate is alive, and she recently confirmed on Twitter that there are rumors that they're going to turn Animorphs into a graphic novel.
Wait, she confirmed that there are rumors?
I think there was she confirmed that they're working on it, but it's not a for sure thing because, it's tied
because
up in
everything
red tape.
90s old is nostalgia new again.
Well, we're making a podcast out of it, so you can't make too many jokes like that.
That was barely a joke.
That's true.
I want to open up a Patreon for this podcast so that we can make this
Get a little couple bucks trickling in. Yeah.
Send us $1 on Patreon and we'll email you a pizza roll. Obligatory blanket reference.
Also, Pizza Roll, send us free stuff, please.
Please. We'll reference you all the time. Also, if any 90s, companies that are still around, Pop-Tarts, Pizza Pops, what else was big?
Oh, yeah, fruit roll-ups.
McDonald's gets mentioned a lot.
You wanna take all the excess green slime from Ghostbusters Twinkies that you still have lying around and put them in some snack cakes for us?
Shoot it our way.
Go
hype
ahead.
you up. At one point, the kids morph into, scavengers, and they talk about, is that a McDonald's bag I see? Every time they morph into scavengers, it's there's McDonald's French fries, let's eat them.
There also are, and this is something I wanted to talk about just throughout the series, but there are so many pop culture drops. There's one point where, I think it's in the second book, where she's like, the door whooshed open like a door on Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's you don't have to say that. I mean, I guess it's trying to ground it in the time, but it's I don't think it's hard to imagine what a door whooshing open.
I guess.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think it really does. I mean, Star Trek is still going hard.
I mean, Star Trek's a weird one too. So, but they talk about David Letterman. They talk about
Powerpuff Girls. Marco watches the Powerpuff Girls, and because of that, he misses Mr. Rogers.
So I was thinking more of just this book.
They talk about a video game or
that's a made-up video game. I looked it up.
Dead Zone 5 or something.
I think they just.
I'm sure that one's made up.
The way that they refer to video games in this series is very the author has never played a video game and is just I'm pretty sure there's violence. Also, I think there's lives. You have lives? Yeah. Rachel refers to something as a video game nightmare, which is pretty open to interpretation, I would say, but not if you're a middle-aged white lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is fair.
Okay, maybe since this has gone on for so long.
The author is dead.
Yeah, we're just taking the books.
She died last year.
No.
Before she confirmed on Twitter.
False.
No.
False.
Okay.
# confirmed. # car crash videos. # Princess Diana.
There it is, yeah. Okay. Let's move on to predictions. So obviously, Tessa and I cannot really do predictions other than for a few select things because I haven't read all the books.
I said this in the chat last night, but I'll say it on the podcast. I definitely can't do predictions because I went through and I looked at, based on what number and the title, I can guess what any book is about, pretty much. I got 80% of the book.
Hence your title as the expert.
The expert.
Yes.
The biggest fucking nerd at the table.
Brayden as
a title which we will be changing at random.
Brayden to Fuhrer. No, Brayden, you have to do the predictions and...
What do you think book 2 will be about?
So even going forward, so book 2, it's sort of hard because they're just capers, right?
Yes.
But overall, how do you think this is going to go?
Okay, so they know there's the Yeerk pool. They have had very little success in a direct attack. There's probably going to be some more brutal guerrilla style attacks on the sharing group. They're probably going to attempt to infiltrate it a couple more times even. Find out more spying is going to happen, and then they're going to have to brutally kill people they think they know. Of
course.
I imagine some more short chapters about some drama acquiring morphs, or just the sort of elation they get from morphing. Tobias is a fucking permahawk now. Holy shit. How are they going to deal with that? How's Rachel going to feel about that? Obviously...
Hey, man, 2 hawks can get down, if you know what I mean.
Yeah?
Tessa is squirming in her seat.
I was going to say something, and I'm no, because that's in book 2.
Yeah, we're not going to give any details away.
Okay.
But
It's like a baby detail.
Yeah, and honestly, we're going to do predictions at the end of every episode, and I'm curious to see how it changes because things change a lot every book.
Yeah.
I put in so many predictions and just like my general overview. Just to go over those again. I predict that the prince, the Andalite who gave them powers, messed with their brains some and like made them want to fight the Yeerks on some base level. I suspect that Visor 3 either has such an ego that he doesn't believe anyone but an Andalite could take him on, or that it is not a grand universal truth that Andalites gain their morphing powers through technology in general. I suspect Tom. I have a baby prediction, a tentative baby prediction that Tom is dead. They've just like sort of like that slash that I believe turned him into boy confetti killed the Tom body, and that like they believed that for whatever reason it was maybe they're on to the Animorphs more than book 1 tried to give on.
Okay. Maybe
just Tom's got an important Yeerk in him, or they believe that Tom is more important in some way. I believe that Tom is gone. They have somehow Frankensteined his body to be useful to them.
Okay.
Even though it's technically dead. And that's because that was over and done with. Like Jake was so busted up about his brother being clawed in half. I like I said, my visual I registered it in my head as this boy as a child being sliced in half or gutted, like some sort of brutal, this is an unboy.
Right.
This is an ex-human aliveness thing. But then he's back, and it's just like it's one paragraph and gone. I was very sad about my brother Tom, but then he came home.
But then I cried about Tobias being stuck as a hawk. Not dead or anything, just stuck as a awesome hawk.
Yeah. I mean, Tobias doesn't seem too bothered. I do think that was a bit early to pull the trigger on that. Like I thought that would happen like it wasn't even a big reason. Like I expected like he was just hiding. I mean like I guess you could argue that they had to sort of pull that trigger this early to establish like yes. Yeah. It is 100% possible.
Serious. I feel like it might have also been set up just to help show, it's a great power, also a huge curse and responsibility. And just like, it's one of those quiet casualties of war. Like a lot of soldiers in World War I and World War II especially, like they died of dysentery or something.
Yeah.
They didn't die going out in blaze of
Let's maybe not draw too many connections to too many world wars either, because... Not that that's a wrong analogy. I just don't want to blow the importance of the Animorphs YA novel series out of proportion.
Yeah.
But I feel I like that
being
interpretation.
A hawk is hardly as bad as dysentery death.
I like the predictions overall because
I mean both of them
excited.
Involve liquid poop.
I'm excited for you to see how many of those are true and how many of those.
Yeah, that's gonna be the most fun. It's just like how more information gets trickled down through the books, where Brayden goes with it.
Yeah, I have a lot of answers for a lot of those things.
Tessa, trickle down. Is that an implicit endorsement of trickle-down economics, you fucking Reaganite?
Let's wrap it up. So next time we'll be talking about Animorphs number 2, The Visitor. Which is the last of the painted covers. They only did that for the first 2 books, where it was the painted cover of just the small child's head. All the other ones are pretty much a full body photo. So we'll probably just wrap it up there. This is the longest any episode will hopefully be. We're shooting more for half-hour episodes, but with the first episode, you have to kind of establish the mechanics and the systems of the series. So with that, I will say goodbye. This has been Mikael.
This has been Tessa.
And this is Brayden.
And this has been Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles. If you're looking for more Animorphs content, you can find us on SoundCloud, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search for Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles.
brought to you by
Collective Legacy.
a podcast network.